a WikiVidi documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. Pablo Picasso. Pablo Picasso was a Spanish painter, sculptor, printmaker, ceramicist, stage designer, poet, and playwright who spent most of his adult life in France. Regarded as one of the most influential artists of the 20th century, he is known for co-founding the Cubist movement, the invention of constructed sculpture, the co-invention of collage, and for the wide variety of styles that he helped develop and explore. Among his most famous works are the proto-Cubist Les Demoiselles d'Avignon and Guernica, a dramatic portrayal of the bombing of Guernica by the German and Italian air forces. Picasso demonstrated extraordinary artistic talent in his early years, painting in a naturalistic manner through his childhood and adolescence. During the first decade of the 20th century, his style changed as he experimented with different theories, techniques, and ideas. After 1906, the Fauvist work of the slightly older artist Henri Matisse motivated Picasso to explore more radical styles, beginning a fruitful rivalry between the two artists, who subsequently were often paired by critics as the leaders of modern art. Picasso's work is often categorized into periods. While the names of many of his later periods are debated, the most commonly accepted periods in his work are the Blue Period, the Rose Period, the African-influenced period, Analytic Cubism, and Synthetic Cubism, also referred to as the Crystal Period. Much of Picasso's work of the late 1910s and early 1920s is in a neoclassical style, and his work in the mid-1920s often has characteristics of surrealism. His later work often combines elements of his earlier styles. Exceptionally prolific throughout the course of his long life, Picasso achieved universal renown and immense fortune for his revolutionary artistic accomplishments, and became one of the best-known figures in 20th century art. Early life. Picasso was baptized Pablo Diego José Francisco de Paula Juan Nepomuceno María de los Remedios Cipriano de la Santísima Trinidad Ruiz y Picasso, a series of names honoring various saints and relatives. Ruiz y Picasso were included for his father and mother, respectively, as per Spanish law. Born in the city of Malaga in the Andalusian region of Spain, he was the first child of Don José Ruiz y Blasco and María Picasso y López. His mother was of one-quarter Italian descent, from the territory of Genoa. Though baptized a Catholic, Picasso would later on become an atheist. Picasso's family was of middle-class background. His father was a painter who specialized in naturalistic depictions of birds and other game. For most of his life, Ruiz was a professor of art at the School of Crafts and a curator of a local museum. Ruiz's ancestors were minor aristocrats. Picasso showed a passion and a skill for drawing from an early age. According to his mother, his first words were "pez, pez," a shortening of lapis, the Spanish word for pencil. From the age of 7, Picasso received formal artistic training from his father in figure drawing and oil painting. Ruiz was a traditional academic artist and instructor, who believed that proper training required disciplined copying of the masters, and drawing the human body from plaster casts and live models. His son became preoccupied with art to the detriment of his classwork. The family moved to A Coruña in 1891, where his father became a professor at the School of Fine Arts. They stayed almost 4 years. On one occasion, the father found his son painting over his unfinished sketch of a pigeon. Observing the precision of his son's technique, an apocryphal story relates, Ruiz felt that the 13-year-old Picasso had surpassed him, and vowed to give up painting, though paintings by him exist from later years. In 1895, Picasso was traumatized when his 7-year-old sister, Conchita, died of diphtheria. After her death, the family moved to Barcelona, where Ruiz took a position at its School of Fine Arts. Picasso thrived in the city, regarding it in times of sadness or nostalgia as his true home. Ruiz persuaded the officials at the academy to allow his son to take an entrance exam for the advanced class. This process often took students a month, but Picasso completed it in a week, and the jury admitted him, at just 13. As a student, Picasso lacked discipline, but made friendships that would affect him in later life. His father rented a small room for him close to home so he could work alone, yet he checked up on him numerous times a day, judging his drawings. The two argued frequently. Picasso's father and uncle decided to send the young artist to Madrid's Real Academia de Bellas Artes de San Fernando, the country's foremost art school. At age 16, Picasso set off for the first time on his own, but he disliked formal instruction and stopped attending classes soon after enrollment. Madrid held many other attractions. The Prado housed paintings by Diego Velázquez, Francisco Goya, and Francisco Zurbarán. Picasso especially admired the works of El Greco. Elements such as his elongated limbs, arresting colors, and mystical visages are echoed in Picasso's later work. Before 1900, Picasso's training under his father began before 1890. His progress can be traced in the collection of early works now held by the Museo Picasso in Barcelona, which provides one of the most comprehensive records extant of any major artist's beginnings. During 1893 the juvenile quality of his earliest work falls away, and by 1894 his career as a painter can be said to have begun. The academic realism apparent in the works of the mid-1890s is well displayed in The First Communion, a large composition that depicts his sister, Lola. In the same year, at the age of 14, he painted Portrait of Aunt Pepper, a vigorous and dramatic portrait that one Eduardo Salot has called, without a doubt, one of the greatest in the whole history of Spanish painting. In 1897, his realism began to show a symbolist influence. For example, in a series of landscape paintings rendered in non-naturalistic violet and green tones. What some call his modernist period followed. His exposure to the work of Rossetti, Steinlen, Toulouse-Lautrec, and Edvard Munch, combined with his admiration for favorite old masters such as El Greco, led Picasso to a personal version of modernism in his works of this period. Picasso made his first trip to Paris, then the art capital of Europe, in 1900. There, he met his first Parisian friend, journalist and poet Max Jacob, who helped Picasso learn the language and its literature. Soon they shared an apartment. Max slept at night while Picasso slept during the day and worked at night. These were times of severe poverty, cold, and desperation. Much of his work was burned to keep the small room warm. During the first 5 months of 1901, Picasso lived in Madrid, where he and his anarchist friend Francisco de Assis Sola founded the magazine Arte Joven, which published 5 issues. Sola solicited articles, and Picasso illustrated the journal, mostly contributing grim cartoons depicting and sympathizing with the state of the poor. The first issue was published on the 31st of March 1901, by which time the artist had started to sign his work Picasso, before he had signed Pablo Picasso. Blue Period, 1901–1904. Picasso's Blue Period, characterized by somber paintings rendered in shades of blue and blue-green, only occasionally warmed by other colors, began either in Spain in early 1901, or in Paris in the second half of the year. Many paintings of gaunt mothers with children date from the Blue Period, during which Picasso divided his time between Barcelona and Paris. In his austere use of color, and sometimes doleful subject matter, prostitutes and beggars are frequent subjects. Picasso was influenced by a trip through Spain and by the suicide of his friend Carlos Casagemas. Starting in autumn of 1901 he painted several posthumous portraits of Casagemas, culminating in the gloomy allegorical painting La Vie, now in the Cleveland Museum of Art. Rose Period, 1904–1906. The same mood pervades the well-known etching The Frugal Repast, which depicts a blind man and a sighted woman, both emaciated, seated at a nearly bare table. Blindness is a recurrent theme in Picasso's works of this period, also represented in The Blind Man's Meal and in the Portrait of Celestina. Other works include Portrait of Sola and Portrait of Suzanne Bloch. The Rose Period is characterized by a lighter tone and style utilizing orange and pink colors, and featuring many circus people, acrobats, and harlequins known in France as saltimbanques. The harlequin, a comedic character usually depicted in checkered patterned clothing, became a personal symbol for Picasso. Picasso met Fernande Olivier, a Bohemian artist who became his mistress, in Paris in 1904. Olivier appears in many of his Rose Period paintings, many of which are influenced by his warm relationship with her. In addition to his increased exposure to French painting, the generally upbeat and optimistic mood of paintings in this period is reminiscent of the 1899 1901 period, and 1904 can be considered a transition year between the two periods. By 1905, Picasso became a favorite of American art collectors Leo and Gertrude Stein. Their older brother Michael Stein and his wife Sarah also became collectors of his work. Picasso painted portraits of both Gertrude Stein and her nephew Alan Stein. Gertrude Stein became Picasso's principal patron, acquiring his drawings and paintings and exhibiting them in her informal salon at her home in Paris. At one of her gatherings in 1905, he met Henri Matisse, who was to become a lifelong friend and rival. The Steins introduced him to Claribel Cohn and her sister Etta, who were American art collectors. They also began to acquire Picasso and Matisse's paintings. Eventually Leo Stein moved to Italy. Michael and Sarah Stein became patrons of Matisse, while Gertrude Stein continued to collect Picasso. In 1907 Picasso joined an art gallery that had recently been opened in Paris by Daniel Henry Kahnweiler. Kahnweiler was a German art historian and art collector who became one of the premier French art dealers of the 20th century. He was among the first champions of Pablo Picasso, Georges Braque and the Cubism that then jointly developed. Kahnweiler promoted burgeoning artists such as André Deraisne, Kees van Dongen, Fernand Léger, Juan Gris, Maurice de Vlaminck and several others who had come from all over the globe to live and work in Montparnasse at the time. African Art and Primitivism, 1907-1909. Picasso's African-influenced period begins with his painting Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. Picasso painted this composition in a style inspired by Iberian sculpture, but repainted the faces of the two figures on the right after being powerfully impressed by African artifacts he saw in June 1907 in the Ethnographic Museum at Palais du Trocadero. When he displayed the painting to acquaintances in his studio later that year, the nearly universal reaction was shock and revulsion. Matisse angrily dismissed the work as a hoax. Picasso did not exhibit Les Demoiselles publicly until 1916. Other works from this period include Nude with Raised Arms and Three Women. Formal ideas developed during this period lead directly into the Cubist period that follows. Analytic Cubism, 1909-1912. Analytic Cubism is a style of painting Picasso developed with Georges Braque using monochrome brownish and neutral colors. Both artists took apart objects and analyzed them in terms of their shapes. Picasso and Braque's paintings at this time share many similarities. Synthetic Cubism, 1912-1919. Synthetic Cubism was a further development of the genre of Cubism, in which cut paper fragments, often wallpaper or portions of newspaper pages, were pasted into compositions, marking the first use of collage in fine art. In Paris, Picasso entertained a distinguished coterie of friends in the Montmartre and Montparnasse quarters, including André Breton, poet Guillaume Apollinaire, writer Alfred Jarry, and Gertrude Stein. Apollinaire was arrested on suspicion of stealing the Mona Lisa from the Louvre in 1911. Apollinaire pointed to his friend Picasso, who was also brought in for questioning, but both were later exonerated. Between 1915 and 1917, Picasso began a series of paintings depicting highly geometric and minimalist Cubist objects, consisting of either a pipe, a guitar or a glass, with an occasional element of collage. Hard-edged square-cut diamonds, notes art historian John Richardson. These gems do not always have upside or downside. We need a new name to designate them, wrote Picasso to Gertrude Stein. Maurice Raynal suggested crystal cubism. These little gems may have been produced by Picasso in response to critics who had claimed his defection from the movement through his experimentation with classicism within the so-called return to order following the war. After acquiring some fame and fortune, Picasso left Olivier for Marcel Humbert, whom he called Eva Ghoul. Picasso included declarations of his love for Eva in many Cubist works. Picasso was devastated by her premature death from illness at the age of 30 in 1915. At the outbreak of World War I in August 1914, Picasso was living in Avignon. Braque and Deraisne were mobilized, and Apollinaire joined the French artillery, while the Spaniard Juan Gris remained from the Cubist circle. During the war, Picasso was able to continue painting uninterrupted, unlike his French comrades. His paintings became more somber and his life changed with dramatic consequences. Kahnweiler's contract had terminated on his exile from France. At this point Picasso's work would be taken on by the art dealer Léonce Rosenberg. After the loss of Eva Goul, Picasso had an affair with Gaby Lespinasse. During the spring of 1916, Apollinaire returned from the front wounded. They renewed their friendship, but Picasso began to frequent new social circles. Towards the end of World War I, Picasso became involved with Serge Diaghilev's Ballets Russes. Among his friends during this period were Jean Cocteau, Jean Hugo, Juan Gris, and others. In the summer of 1918, Picasso married Olga Yoklova, a ballerina with Sergei Diaghilev's troupe, for whom Picasso was designing a ballet, Eric Satie's Parade, in Rome. They spent their honeymoon near Biarritz in the villa of glamorous Chilean art patron Eugenia Errázuriz. After returning from his honeymoon and in need of money, Picasso started his exclusive relationship with the French Jewish art dealer Paul Rosenberg. As part of his first duties, Rosenberg agreed to rent the couple an apartment in Paris at his own expense, which was located next to his own house. This was the start of a deep brother-like friendship between two very different men that would last until the outbreak of World War II. Hochlever introduced Picasso to high society, formal dinner parties, and other dimensions of the life of the rich in 1920s Paris. The two had a son, Pablo Picasso, who would grow up to be a motorcycle racer and chauffeur to his father. Hochlever's insistence on social propriety clashed with Picasso's bohemian tendencies, and the two lived in a state of constant conflict. During the same period that Picasso collaborated with Diaghilev's troupe, he and Igor Stravinsky collaborated on Pulcinella in 1920. Picasso took the opportunity to make several drawings of the composer. In 1927 Picasso met 17-year-old Marie-Thérèse Walter and began a secret affair with her. Picasso's marriage to Hochlever soon ended in separation rather than divorce, as French law required an even division of property in the case of divorce, and Picasso did not want Hochlever to have half his wealth. The two remained legally married until Hochlever's death in 1955. Picasso carried on a long-standing affair with Marie-Thérèse Walter and fathered a daughter with her, named Maya. Marie-Thérèse lived in the vain hope that Picasso would one day marry her, and hanged herself 4 years after Picasso's death. Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Would you like to know more?